why are they doing so well? And you can call it a loser mentality. Whenever you hear anybody hate or dislike the Jews because they're doing well, that is a hater, loser mentality. If you see some group in the world doing good, wouldn't you want to learn from them? Wouldn't you want to befriend them? Wouldn't you want to find out what and how they are so great at this stuff that they do? They're great at in the field that Dave Smith and Joe Rogan work in the comedy world. Some of the greatest American comedians are Jewish, have been Jewish. Welcome to this video. Today we're going to talk about the Joe Rogan experience with Douglas Murray and Dave Smith, and Ukraine and Israel, which I find very interesting as subjects. And also, to be very honest from the beginning, I thought Douglas Murray won the debate. Of course, Dave Smith has childish arguments. Is like the whole pro-Palestinian movement and the side of pro-Palestinians, their arguments are very basic, very childish, very they're talking from a point of view of very little knowledge, very little understanding of the nuances of the conflicts, and also very emotional, very childish. It's like talking to children about a very extremely nuanced subject when it comes to war and politics and foreign policy and all of the actors within foreign policy. And also what I find as an Iranian who was born in a Sharia state of the Islamic Republic, I find it very interesting that they could talk almost for 3 hours without mentioning the war, the Islamic war. The Islamic war against the Jews, the Islamic war against infidels, about Islam as an idea. I found it interesting that they couldn't talk about Islam. They didn't talk about Islam. It's really a taboo, and I don't understand this because I love comedians. I love American comedy. I follow Joe Rogan, Dave Smith. I actually think Dave Smith is very funny. I, on a weekly basis, watch his podcast that he has with his two friends called Legion of Skanks. I love that show. He is funny. He's a comedian and he's funny. But to think that he can, just become a political commentator because he has feelings about things without any real knowledge about it, without any facts, oh, I have children. Really? People in Israel didn't have children on October 7th? People in Israel are not afraid of their children being killed? You think that is not something that is motivating for Israelis to fight for their children not to be killed by Islamists, by jihadists? That is exactly what this war is about. To think that Israeli children are not in danger just right now, even before the war. The fact is, Israel has 2 million Arabs living inside of Israel, many of whom are very grateful for everything in Israel, who are integrated within the state of Israel, who love the state of Israel, right? But the Palestinians do not tolerate any Jews within the territories where they live. They will hunt them and kill them if they're not armed. This is the reality of Israeli children. So when you talk about children, yes, war is horrible. I feel for Israeli children as I feel for Palestinian children. The most crazy thing about this whole war and this whole conflict is that Israel cares more about Palestinian children than Hamas does. They say when it puts children in danger, knowing they could and will be killed, the children you're crying for, that I'm crying for as well. Do you know what they say to the parents, to the families? They say, it's a good thing. Your child is a martyr. We used your child in this war and it died as a martyr. They are a death cult. Hamas is a death cult. You cannot negotiate with a death cult. So thinking, oh, if you fight a death cult, they will just keep on being a death cult. That's not true. The truth is that if you do not win the war against this death cult, this will continue as it has continued. You know what? Palestine was never and will never be. Palestine was an idea. I supported a two-state solution up until October 7th. On the date of October 7th, 2023, Hamas killed Palestine. Rest in peace. It will never be. It was never meant to be. It was never about Palestine. It was never about Israel. This death cult and the Islamists and the jihadists of the region, and also even the jihadists living in Europe and in the United States, all of these Islamists, jihadists, the death cult of Hamas, the Islamic Jihad, Al-Qaeda, all of them, ISIS, the Taliban, wants to unalive Jews. It was never about Israel. It is not about Palestine. It's about an Islamic caliphate. And the first goal for some Islamists is the state of Israel, right? But it doesn't end there. That's why they're killing in Europe. That's why they're killing in the US. That's why no one is safe from these Islamists. That's why if you hear Allahu Akbar anywhere near you in the public, you will run for your life, even if you are a Muslim. The reality is that Muslims are the group being killed most by these Islamists. This is not about racism against Muslims, hating all Muslims. This is about calling out a religion, calling out an ideology, calling out the mentality of hating Jews. It's the theology, mainstream literalist theology across the board. Despite Sunni Shia and all of the other differences, is genocidal against the Jews. That's it. It's genocide against the Jews. And it's not even theology, it's become culture. So when you grow up in a Muslim family, in many Muslim families, it is very normal. Even if you're not a Muslim family in the Middle East, it's very normal to hate the Jew, because that's just the way the culture has, taught us to think. I was brought up in Iran hating the state of Israel. And, we were taught that it's not about Jews, we just hate Zionists, we just hate the state of Israel. But then when I was writing my book, Public Secrets of Islam, and I was writing about how Sunni Islamists want all Jews dead, and then I was thinking, is this also the case for the Shia Islamic theology? And then I started reading Islamic theology in Persian, in Farsi, on state sites of Hausa. And guess what? It was exactly the same as the Sunni genocidal telling of, yes, there will come a day where the last Jew will be unalived by the Muslim, and the nature will even help. This is based on a hadith that both Sunnis and Shias think is how Judgment Day will come about, is that, the Muslims will unalive every single Jewish person on earth. And this has been said by Muslim Brotherhood spiritual leader, now that Al-Qaradawi. This has, Hezbollah's Nasrallah, that is now unalived, had said that it's a good thing we have Israel. It's a good thing we have Israel. Why do you think he said it's a good thing we have Israel? It's a good thing because we don't need to go all around the world to find these to kill, to find Jews to unalive. And this is because they believe in this hadith, this based on what the prophet had said about the Jews. All of these protests in the West have so much money and people and propaganda behind them. How is it? Could it be that Qatar and Iran and China and Russia even is supporting this? And could it be that even all of the hatred, Jew hatred on X and anti-Semitism and hatred against Israel is funded by some of these enemy of the West countries, enemy of the West being China, Qatar, Russia, Iran. These countries, could they be funding propaganda against Israel? We know that these countries have been trying to influence social media. We know that these countries have bought bots that make protests and other things online and in real life even to disrupt the peace and coexistence within the Western world. And yes, it's not all them, but they have pushed our societies into hating each other. We in the West have become incapable of sitting together and discussing things. It's so polarized. It's so extreme. We need to be nuanced in these discussions. We need to tackle these discussions very nuanced. And I don't care about your feelings and how you could imagine your children as Palestinian children, Dave. You are Jewish. Guess what? All of these Islamists that you are, not defending, but you are making a case for them, you, in their eyes, you are as legitimate of a target for them, and your children are as well, as mine, because I'm an infidel. I am an infidel. I don't believe in God, right? So that's the case. It is not about Palestine. It is not about Israel. They hate the United States as much as they hate Germany, as much as they hate Denmark, as much as they hate France. There was a pro-Palestinian takeover of a university in Berlin University, I think, and they had written, "Fuck you, Germany." Why is an American citizen, or even someone who just has a visa to stay or work or study in America, why are they out to destroy America? What is this ideology that is also theology? We need, as the whole world needs to discuss this topic. And this is why I am very sad that, Douglas Murray had so much to do in that session, and he has talked about death cults, and he talks about it more indirectly, but sometimes he'll tell you this is about religion. At the end of the day, it's theology that rules these minds, that radicalizes minds, that brainwashes people, that every generation, no matter what we do, as long as the mosques are used to do this against their own children, giving weapons to children, teaching them to hate and to want to kill and to want to destroy, not only Jews, but infidels wanting to take over the whole world through power. This is how Islam expanded. It wasn't, Islam was not a religion that made a good case for itself. Islam was, Islam became great through wars, through the sword, through killing people and oppressing people. And Iranians know this more than anyone. And if you want to talk about colonialism. Douglas Murray is right. Iran is a colonialist, Islamist entity wanting to have influence in all of the Muslim countries, and is working, to have spies and terrorists and militias in all Muslim countries. We know that Iran, the Islamic Republic of Iran, tried to kill Trump. We know this. Even though we don't know much about the two people who were caught, that, to actually try to assassinate Trump, we don't know much about them. We don't know who was behind that or if anybody was behind that. But we know from, American sources, American intelligence sources, that Iran has tried to assassinate Trump and other people from his administration. Pompeo was at a conference in Europe, and Iranian diplomats were involved in trying to kill people at that conference, right? So this is the reality of things. Iran is the head of the death cult. And what is more dangerous about Iran, more than ISIS and Al-Qaeda, is that they can sit down and pretend they can have diplomatic talks. They are so good at it. They're so good at it that ISIS is now trying to do the same. They know that this is a better strategy, not to tell you what they want to do to you right away and try to both unalive you and talk to you at the same time. This is what Iran has been doing since the hostages were taken right after the revolution in 1979. And now the hostage business in the Middle East is used by Hamas, ISIS, Taliban, everyone. Iran still, Iran is, they're the architects behind this hostage business that they have going on. And I love, as I said, comedians, American comedians. I follow Tim Dillon, I follow Theo Vaughn, and I follow many others. And for me, it has, and Joe Rogan and Dave Smith even. I watched his latest special. It's great. I thought it was funny, even though I don't agree with him when it comes to Ukraine and Israel. I appreciate the comedians of the world, but especially American comedians I've fallen in love with, because they have this thing that I also have. If something is taboo, they will talk about it. If you tell them not to talk about something, they will talk about it. But many do not talk about Islam, of course. This is, it's a security thing, I guess. But some do, and this is why I love them. I love that the American comedians and podcasters went against the woke mentality of, destroying free speech, essentially. And I love that about the American comedians and podcasters. I've been following, all of these podcasts for years, and they have helped me because I need to laugh when I work with these subjects, being from Iran, having to deal with and talking about and write about Islamic terrorism all day long. I survived an Islamic terrorist attack in Denmark in 2015. And a lot of shit have happened to me since then. And many things will happen to you if you talk about Islam. It's not only the threat of terrorism, it's, there is lawfare that the Trump experienced. Tommy Robinson is maybe the best known case in Europe. I'm a convict myself, because I shared a link to a video of terrorist attack in Morocco that the Danish media and Danish authorities never told us the whole truth about. The Danish media then, after some time, after me and other people were pointing it out, they started telling us the truth about a Danish and Norwegian woman being decapitated in Morocco. A lot of Danes still to this day do not know what happened really in Morocco to these women. and nobody remembers their name. Nobody talked about that because the story was that they were just found dead in Morocco, instead of the fact that Islamic terrorists decapitated both of them. They were found with their heads and bodies separated. Because of that, I shared this link, and I was convicted of having breached her privacy, the Danish woman's privacy, sharing the link, insisting to talk about and to documenting that this woman was killed, beheaded by Islamic terrorists because she was an infidel. Only because she was an infidel. And now I have a case with another Islamist against me. You know, that's how it goes for many of us who dare to speak out. And I really, since the Ukraine war and since the war after October 7th, I've really been very disappointed in Joe Rogan, in Tim Dillon, in Theo Von, and in Dave Smith. You know, specifically these podcasters, especially these podcasters, have been very, very superficial and taking almost this very emotional side against, you know, the easy target being Israel. And Israel is just fighting to exist. They have only been fighting to exist, right? And to exist where? In the Jewish homeland. They want a Jewish homeland. They are Jews, right? Judaism started there. Jews have always been living there. And after the Holocaust, they just wanted a Jewish homeland because everywhere people are trying to kill them, right? So how are we doing this? Let's talk about how Israel is a legitimate state, but to Dave Smith, that's not the case. Israel is not a legitimate state because they want Jewish majority. Yes, let this small piece of land belong to Jewish people. Everybody apparently hates them. Let them have this land. And you know why I love Israelis so much? Because they are aware of their enemy in this region. They understand that they have to fight these Islamists and jihadists who want to kill them. And they are an example for so many people in the Middle East who were colonized by Islamists, who were colonized and suppressed. All of the minorities in the region who were colonized, even Muslims today, are being killed in the millions. If you look at the last 20 years, in the many millions, Muslims have been killed in Muslim countries by the hand of Islamists, by the hand of other Muslims in the name of Islam. So this religion needs to change or needs to go away. This is the end goal, right? Between here and the end goal, I will stand beside Muslims who will want to reform Islam, and I will stand beside Christians and ex-Muslims and atheists and all different kinds of infidels in the eyes of Islamists, and fight against these Islamists, fight against these jihadists, and also fight against the theology that is the ideology behind what they believe in, right? This is very important. When Theo Von says, but can the government just tell us why we are on the side of Israel? Yes. Of course they should tell you why they're on the side of Israel. Because Israel is a Western country. And Iran that is paying for all this, the Qataris that are paying for all this, the death cults that are trying to kill all the Jews, they are out to get you as well, Theovan. You are an infidel in their eyes. There is a very good reason why the Secretary of Defense has a tattoo that says kafir, which means infidel in Arabic. You are a kafir, right? I am. The Jews are. We are their enemies. Not all Muslims believe this. Fortunately, not all Muslims know to what extent this theology is also a death cult ideology. And many of the modern Muslims that we know, they don't even want to talk about it because it's so dangerous for them if they speak up. But because these Islamists are always ready to attack you violently, even in the West, it's dangerous, right? And we all decide it's too dangerous. Even American comedians decide this is too dangerous. I'll rather not talk about Islam. I'll rather not talk about the Prophet, the Quran, whatever. Don't mention the war, meaning the Islamic war, right? Islamists, the jihadists, don't mention Islam at all. Even just saying the word Islam will get you demonetized, shadow banned, prosecuted. It's crazy what's going on in the Western world. We need to be as brave as the Israelis and fight this theology that is also ideology. Theo One has had many pro-Palestinian watermelon activists on his podcast, and I can't watch all of it. It's too hurtful. It's too hurtful to watch, and it's childish. Their arguments are childish. We have to understand that, even calling Gaza a concentration camp before October 7th was crazy. Here are pictures from Gaza before October 7th. But Israel has done everything Israel can do to tell Palestinians to get out of the way when they're going to bomb, telling them where to go and what to do, letting in aid. And all of this, people are always saying, oh, there's not enough coming in of aid and stuff. What about Egypt? Egypt has a border. Have you seen the border of Egypt with Gaza? Have you seen this border? Why is Egypt not? They're Arabs. They're Muslim. Why are they not helping more, right? There is a reason, because even if you would travel around in the Arab countries, nobody likes the Palestinians because they have been brainwashed with Islamic, they have been used by Islamists so much that the whole culture, and they just don't like Palestinians. They don't want them in their countries, right? And why is that? They're literally the same. They're Arabs, they're Muslim. What's the problem, right? So when you're thinking about Gaza, right, in the last before the war, up until the war started in 2023, since 2005, the population of Gaza almost doubled, right? How can that be if we are talking about a concentration camp? Do you know what concentration camps are? Do you know what happened to the Jewish people when they were genocided by the Germans, by the Nazi regime in Germany? Their population fell by 6 million people. The population in Gaza has doubled in the years that you're saying they were in a concentration camp. Even before the October 7th war, the pro-Palestinian movement and activists in the Western countries and also in Palestine were talking about genocide. The idea of genocide is hilarious. Nobody's trying to kill all the Palestinians, and the numbers we have from Hamas, I think they're blown up. They are, blown up artificially. We don't have any documentation for the death of these people. And of course, people have died. Many thousands of people have died. Many thousand children have died in this war. And it's a horrible war, and we can see from drone footage that Gaza is, it's not livable, as Trump is saying. It's not. And when you're trying to blow up the tunnels, and they, as Douglas Murray was saying, they connect to all sorts of hospitals and homes, then that's what's going to happen. And do you know how many Israeli soldiers that have died in this war also since October 7th? And if it was your children, if it was, let's say you're a US citizen in Canada or Mexico does an October 7th on you, you want to send your children to die there, or you want to bomb them from the air? What are you going to do? What's going to happen? Still, they have sent so many soldiers to try to do this as efficient as possible without civilians dying. And Palestine will never be. Get that into your head. Wokeists on the left, wokeists on the right, Islamists and jihadists, get this into your head. Israel is going nowhere. Iranians stand with Israel. And as an Iranian, I want Israel to attack the Islamic fascists. I want the regime to be toppled with the help of Israelis, with the help of the United States. And I understand that the United States and even Israelis do not want to have soldiers on the ground in Iran. They don't want that. And if we can do it without that, we can do it through air campaigns, through drone attacks, through air campaigns against the IRGC, against military installations, against the regime heads in Iran. If that's possible, yes, let's do it. And the only thing that is, because Iran is not like Iraq or Afghanistan. And Tim Dillon was like, in his latest podcast was written, Tim Dillon, who is a comedian, in his latest podcast was reading a statement of Iranians saying, threatening the West and saying, if you go to war against us, you will have, you will repeat Iraq and Afghanistan. The Iranian people, more than 80% are against this regime. They want this regime to fall. And it will not be, because they're so Western. And Joe Rogan was saying this the other day on his podcast with this other Jew comedian from New York. I don't remember his Rick. I don't remember. I'm so sorry. He's funny as well. I like him, and he's married to a comic as well, and I love them both, but I don't remember their name. But he was talking to this comedian about Iran and how the Iranian people and Iranian women especially are fighting, risking their lives just to live a free Western lifestyle. This is what the Iranians want. So it's not going to be like Iraq and Afghanistan. It's not. The only thing that the Iranians need, and is very important, is that the borders of Iran stay intact and are protected if a war happens, because a lot of Islamists and also other terrorists in the region will try to move in and, even take land and to try to infiltrate. And terrorism is a huge problem in the region, and that will not stop with the Islamic Republic of Iran becoming history, even after we will have Islamic terrorism in the region. But understand this. Trump, in his first term, he made Arab countries come to the peace talks with Israel, and now there's Abraham Accords, and Abraham Accords have survived October 7th and all of this war after. And the Abraham Accords, if a free Iran comes into play with the Abraham Accords and Saudis come to the table as well, it's done. Islamists are done. Jihadists in the region are done. And after, and in that diplomatic setting, it's also very important for Israel, for Iran, for the future of the region, for the future and peace in the world. It's very important that we talk about what nobody wants to talk about. Don't mention the war. Don't mention the war meaning Islamic wars, Islamist ideology, which is also theology, the colonialism that is, it's one and the same as Islamic theology mainstream, because the literalist schools of thought are the main schools within Islam, and the literalist approach needs to just die. The literalist approach is jihad, is child marriage, is genocidal against the Jews, is colonialist, hates infidels. That is what that literalist approach, which is the case for many of the big schools of thought. The school of thoughts and the Muslim populations, it's not one and the same, and it's not just most schools of thought are this and most Muslims feel this. No, it's not one. Fortunately, it's not that, right? But there is a connection between these two, the Muslim people and the theology. There is a connection, but fortunately, it's not a one-to-one problem, right? If everybody felt what the theology says to the word about jihad and child marriage and all of this, we would be in a much worse place. But the fact that we haven't fought these Islamists and their theology and ideology, they have had every possibility to brainwash and bring the Muslim population closer to this ideology and theology, right? So this is the problem. And these Islamists, and with the Abraham Accords and with future peace talks and peace building in the region, it's very important that Israel, the West, and also a future Iran insists on talking about the war.